The Indus Waters Treaty, which was signed in 1960, was a water sharing agreement. Actually, it is not. That there were no diplomats negotiating this treaty. And that's quite striking because you would imagine there would be the Ministry of External Affairs,
Foreign Secretary,
a diplomat
yes,
negotiating such an
absolutely.
important issue, but it was all done by engineers. You know, everything was determined by engineers on both the sides. The Pakistanis still today, and if you meet them, they will say, you know, we were cheated in the partition. But I think our engineers, again, the Punjab engineers, were very, very alert to the fact that if the headwork, Firozpur headwork, went to Pakistan, then India would be at a disadvantage.
Welcome to another episode of Books and Banter, a Dialogus Digital original series. Today we are diving into the subject that literally shapes civilizations, sparks diplomacy, and occasionally keeps policymakers awake at night: water. Most of us think of water as places for picnics, poetry, or maybe the perfect Instagram sunset. But what if I told you that one river system has influenced wars, peace negotiations, foreign policy, and the future of nearly 300 million people? That's exactly what we're exploring today. Joining us is one of India's foremost strategic thinkers on water diplomacy, Dr. Uttam Kumar Sinha, Senior Fellow with the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies and Analyses. His latest book, Trial by Water, Indus Basin and India-Pakistan Relations, takes us beyond maps and treaties to reveal how rivers can become instruments of both conflict and cooperation. Dr. Sinha, welcome to Books and Banter. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here.
You've spent so many years researching water diplomacy. What is the most surprising fact about Indus that almost no one knows?
That's an interesting question. What's surprising about the Indus Basin? I think one of the things that we've grown up with or we've studied is that the Indus Waters Treaty, which was signed in 1960, was a water sharing agreement. Actually, it is not. It is actually partitioning the Indus Basin. So what we've done is, or what the treaty did, was apportion the basin, which means it gave 3 rivers to Pakistan and 3 rivers to India. The western rivers went to Pakistan and the eastern rivers to India. So in the strict sense, it was not really a volumetric water sharing agreement. It was the division of the rivers. And this is something we tend to forget in the general narrative that has been built up around the Indus Waters Treaty and the Indus Basin. The second striking thing when I delved into the whole negotiating process was that there were no diplomats negotiating this treaty. And that's quite striking because you would imagine there would be the Ministry of External Affairs,
Foreign Secretary,
a diplomat negotiating such an important issue, but it was all done by engineers. You know, everything was determined by engineers on both the sides.
Both sides.
And they were the ones who understood the rivers, the volumes, you know, the cusecs and the MAFs and all these technical things which no one else had the knowledge about. And that's very interesting because in the 50s, you had, in a sense, experts of such kind actually being part of negotiating processes. So it wasn't really left to the generalists or the diplomats to negotiate, but the more technical, the more scientific sort of community which was doing it. So that was another revealing aspect. But that did not mean that there wasn't a political objective. There was a political guideline, there was a political leadership of Nehru. But I think it was solely determined by the engineers. And therefore, the treaty is actually a very technical, engineering-oriented treaty. So these were the two very revealing things that comes about when you really study the negotiation and the processes involved.
Do you think if the Indus Water Treaty was decided in 2026, the engineers would be as much involved?
Yes, very much, because we also had...
Along with diplomats.
But it would have been along with
diplomats.
I think one of the lessons we also learned during the negotiation was that the diplomats should be involved and it shouldn't be completely left to the engineers. I'm not demeaning the engineers, because I think the engineers were very nationalist. They protected our interest, contrary to what the narrative is today, that we gave away so much of water. I mean, the book clearly suggests, and the book is based on facts, frankly. There is no opinion that I have. There's no narrative that I'm trying to build.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, and I lay down the facts, and it is for people to look at those facts and see what the things were at that point of time. So that's what it was really. They were very nationalistic and they protected our interests, especially on the eastern rivers.
Right.
Because at that point of time, the eastern rivers were very valuable to us in terms of Punjab and the agrarian requirements. We had built, or we were building the Bhakra-Nangal Canal, which was inaugurated in 1964.
Right.
We had plans to build the Indira Gandhi Canal system, which would take the waters to Rajasthan. There were several projects which was, mapped out, and therefore 100% exclusive use of the eastern rivers was the hard negotiation that our engineers did, and we got all of that.
I think one important factor also was the height. I think we were at a higher altitude than Pakistan. That played also an important factor in, if I remember correctly from my student days.
Well, interestingly, the basin was one, So when the land was partitioned, the basin also got fractured. And that unitary system of the basin was divided between a new geography that India got as an upper riparian, while Pakistan insisted on the old historical uses of water, because the canal systems was in Punjab, which the British built. And therefore they did feel very vulnerable, because the new geography of India meant that India could control the rivers. And the history meant that their canal system would run dry if India stopped the flow of water.
I think it was a strategically helpless situation that they were in at that point.
But I think during the partition, and a lot of that comes out in the book as well, that I don't think Jinnah really paid attention to the headworks of the waters. He was so driven by the partition and the division of the land in Punjab that he forgot in some sense the strategic value of the rivers and the headworks that would go to India.
Right.
That could probably be...
And its implications in the future.
In the future. In fact, they're still, the Pakistanis still today, and if you meet them, they will say, we were cheated in the partition. The boundary line which was drawn initially had the headworks going to Pakistan, the Firozpur headwork, for example, and they would have controlled the waters. But I think our engineers, again, the Punjabi engineers, were very, very alert to the fact that if the headwork, Firozpur headwork, went to Pakistan, then India would be at a disadvantage. And there is a whole revealing story, and this is something that we miss in our partition history, the role of the civil engineers.
I don't think hardly people would know something like this.
So that's something very interesting, not only in this book. This has a small mention of it, but the more detailed account is in my earlier book called The Indus Basin Uninterrupted. And both have been published by Penguin. That came out in 2021. Again, very archival. It's very factual, and I've looked into memoirs where people have never looked into, like the civil engineers' memoirs and their diaries and the notes. So they reveal very interesting facts, and it's very interesting, and I don't have the time to tell this, how Firozpur headwork actually came to India. And that was thanks to the civil engineers.
Wow. Fascinating. So, sir, if you could say what first drew you to the Indus Basin, and what was there like a defining moment you would say that made you realize that water deserved a book to be written on?
I was on a deputation to the Prime Minister's Museum and Library from 2018 to 2020.
Okay.
And I could sense that the treaty was going through a tense period, and I had a hunch that at some point of time things will break away. The treaty would not remain the same as it did for the last 60 years. And then I thought that it's good that before it disappears, let me go back and see how it all came about. What was the discussion during that time? Who were the actors who were involved? What was the outside external powers' interest? And as I kept going back, it eventually took me to the Indus Valley civilization. So it's actually a very long history I draw from the Indus Valley civilization, and there are a lot of learning lessons from Indus Valley civilization, because they understood rivers very well. They understood
canal systems very well.
Canal system. They understood how to irrigate their lands, and they also understood that if the rivers are not managed carefully, then the civilization could eventually die, and that's what happened.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Eventually, it was because of the impact of the river and the changing courses, and of course the shift of the monsoon, that the Indus civilization started gradually to, sort of break,
Right.
and then the final. So I went back, and then I came forward. And then very interesting accounts of how the Mughal rulers looked at the rivers, how invaders, when they came in. So when the invaders would come, whether it was Babur or anyone, the first sight was the Indus,
Right.
the rivers, and they would stop and they would sort of measure the river and see, can I cross it? So it was also a natural defense barrier for the Indian subcontinent at that point of time. So there were lots of fascinating accounts about it.
Beautiful. How long did it take you to research for this book, and what would you say was your biggest challenge in writing this, after doing, I'm sure it was a historical research methodology, how did you come about writing it?
So I realized that there is a particular narrative that has been built up in India along the Indus Waters Treaty, and those narratives, I won't say was completely wrong. There was a perception, and it comes out of a sort of a general understanding that India gave away a lot of water to Pakistan.
Right.
And and it has been described as India being foolishly generous. I mean, you're being generous to Pakistan. It was also described as Nehru being too idealistic in his thinking and thought process. Well, all that was quite fine, but I thought, let me investigate these narratives and see how true is it. Was it really like that? So that actually forced me into looking at facts, and I used, as I said, I didn't form an opinion on it. I just used archival material, and there was a lot of archival materials. World Bank data was very useful in terms of the negotiation. I read memoirs of a lot of actors and leaders around that time to get a sense of how they felt about the treaty. I looked at British notes, the engineers' notes, and I came to a conclusion that there were a couple of things that awakened me. First was that I think India to some extent was forced into a negotiation. Because remember, after the partition 1947 to 1952, there was nothing on the Indus waters. It was sort of an ad hoc arrangement. India was giving waters and taking certain charges from Pakistan. I think there was a determined effort from America, and I think it's the Eisenhower administration, which was pushing India in particularly to negotiate with Pakistan. And there were several strategic reasons for that, which I'm sure one who reads the book will find out. But there was a great American influence, and it was done through the World Bank. So eventually when the treaty is signed, the World Bank is actually the third party to it. It also boiled down to a lot of money being invested here.
Right.
It also was, in some sense, and this is a final point, that the Americans were coming into the subcontinent not through arms or weapons or through a military mindset. They were coming in through science, technology and civil engineering. Because I think India and Pakistan both needed to develop their water resources.
Right.
And that could only come about through the technological breakthroughs that was happening in dam building. And the Americans were the leaders at that point of time. So that's how the American influence was seeping in. It was a great soft power influence, I think, knowledge and the scientific prowess coming into managing our resources.
It's amazing that it was between two countries, and so many external countries were involved with their different roles in it. Yeah.
Well, the external actors always eye the subcontinent.
Yes,
even today.
Always. Your book argues that water is not merely a natural resource but an instrument of geopolitics. How does the concept of hydropolitics reshape our understanding of India-Pakistan relations beyond the traditional security paradigms, like military deterrence or, terrorism for that matter?
Well, I've argued strongly, very early on in my understanding of the relationship, that water is a very strong component of India and Pakistan relations. And it seems very natural, why not? It's almost 275 million people who live on the basin. Includes India and Pakistan. Pakistan dependency on the water is huge.
Huge.
25% of the GDP is dependent on agriculture product, and 90% of that agriculture product is dependent on the rivers from the Indus Basin. So I think the water is very central to the two countries' relationship. And today we see quite clearly that it has now become the principal determinant of the relationship. Also, the treaty binded them together. You see, when the relationship was at its lowest, when there were war, somehow the institutional mechanism of the treaty lived on.
Right.
The water sharing continued to happen, which means that despite the hard politics, there was also the element of water being shared by common people, farmers, people who needed water. So I think there was that distinction. I think that we could fight war, but we would not stop the waters. And I think, and that here, I think you should pay great tribute to the way the Indian leadership thought.
Right.
That, okay, we'll fight war, we will bomb them as well, but we will not stop water. So I think that sense
The
of
humane
the humane and the sense of responsibility
Yeah.
that as an upper riparian we had, that we will not disturb. India could have very easily done several things, and during war, everything is fair in doing
Absolutely.
anything. And I think this is something that we do not communicate effectively to the world. We do not state very powerfully and clearly that we are an upper riparian and a responsible upper riparian.
I think that's beautifully said. I mean, it could have been far worse.
Yes.
Having said that, do you think that the treaty has become too rigid for today's realities, particularly with climate change and changing security concerns?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the treaty does require to be updated, whether you call it Indus Treaty 2.0 or whatever. Things have dramatically changed.
Yeah.
After all, we must not deride this treaty. We often
I'm
say
sure even the shape of the basin would have
has
evolved.
changed. The number of people now consuming water in the basin has
Numbers have
increased.
changed on the
Glaciers
dependency.
have melted. The rainfall pattern has changed. There's a huge impact of climate change. Siltation has increased. So there's so many things that have happened. And we are very quick to say, the treaty was not foresighted. But remember, there was a certain objective of the treaties of the 50s.
Yeah.
Surely there was no climate change impact in the treaty. You wouldn't expect that, really. The idea then was to optimize, water, develop it the way both the countries could. That was the whole intention.
I think the sharing was done on a win-win basis, but the situation has changed.
The situation has changed, and now I think this is the time. Of course, the treaty is in abeyance, again, which I think India had done quite well to use the word abeyance and not to abrogate the treaty. That's what we must tell the world, that the treaty still exists.
Yeah.
It's in abeyance for a particular reason. And that reason is basically what Pakistan has been doing, cross-the-border terrorism.
Correct.
So there is a security link to it now. But yes, when the talk does happen, when the doors open up a bit, we have to look at this treaty in a new light. And we have to incorporate these elements, climate change.
More of contemporary relevance to
absolutely.
it.
But all treaty requires to be updated. There's no harm in that.
No harm.
But it requires a constructive, mutual sort of understanding to do that. That, I think, the political rationality has to be developed first before we open up the treaty to negotiation on these issues.
Connected factors, but one has
Very
to
true,
wait.
Very true.
Since the publication of your book, discussions around the Indus Water Treaty have intensified. Has recent geopolitical tensions in any way changed your assessment of the future?
I think the treaty will have to be revised. That's very clearly. And it has nothing to do with geopolitical tension or not. The tension has only aggravated it. But I think it was always on the card. And
it can either aggravate or become better, but it still needs an update.
It needs an update. And I think, and India was trying to, push for this. Earlier statement of India was talking about, let's look at revision. Let's sit and talk about what we can do, how we can sort of modernize this treaty till the Pahalgam incident happened.
Your work has often examined water beyond South Asia. So what lessons can India learn from river sharing arrangements elsewhere in the world? What would be one of those examples?
Well, I think one of the things we are learning, of course, on an everyday basis, the first thing, of course, would be that treaties need to adapt. And that is something which I did not find in the treaty. The treaty was to a certain extent rigid, but there was a rationality to that, which of course one can read the book and find out as to why the engineers said that there is no exit clause, that you cannot pull out of the treaty. And there was a rationality because they felt that given an opportunity and given what the political relationship between these two countries are, they would have easily abrogated it.
Easily abrogated.
So I think what the engineers felt that they have to bind these countries together in the treaty to get the best out of the treaty. You know, they say in South Asia, no, we are locked into each other's intestine. So I think the engineers felt that they would need to lock both India and Pakistan.
In international relations, you don't choose neighbors, so that's
Yes.
where you're stuck.
So that's how they thought about
Yeah.
it. But now I think, technically speaking, exit clause nahi tha, hona chahiye, and in the new treaty, if it is revised and discussed, I think there will be a time period now.
Yeah.
15 years, like the Ganga Treaty has
Yeah.
a 30-year period.
Correct.
I think that time clause is important to introduce. Now, whether Pakistan would agree to that or not
Is a
that's-
different thing.
It's a different matter altogether.
You know, climate change has fundamentally altering the hydrology of the Himalayan river systems. So, in your assessment, how should India integrate water security into its broader national security and foreign policy strategy?
They have to integrate water security. There's no doubt about it. It is no longer a peripheral subject or an esoteric subject. I think it is very much part of mainstream national security.
In fact, I think some would say water diplomacy is a non-traditional issue. I think it's becoming more and more traditional
Yeah,
issue.
very much, because it's becoming the mainstay of our relationship in South Asia.
Survival, yeah.
If you look at
absolutely.
Nepal, if you look at Pakistan, Bhutan, Bangladesh, the core element are these rivers, and we've had treaties and agreements and MOUs with these countries. So it is very much there, very central. And I think the other element, I think water is not just water.
Correct.
I think water is energy, water is food. So this nexus is very important to understand, and therefore it does become a crucial national security matter.
You know, behind every treaty, more so with water treaty, there are millions of farmers and families that are affected and involved. Did you, at any point of time while writing this book, come across any stories that particularly stayed with you as an author?
Yeah, there were stories, I think, about the citizens of Lahore after the partition. They felt that India controlling the waters would make them very vulnerable. And there are news reports saying that a lot of Lahorians had sleepless nights fearing that India would flood them. so it was very, so there was this huge fear in Pakistan when on 1st April 1948, when the interim partition agreement stopped, it did not exist after 31st. So technically, India stopped the water. So the Lahorians were very frightened by this fact. But the interesting account today is that many Lahorians feel at peace because they know that India can actually stop the floods because of the dams that they have built. So I keep telling Pakistanis friends, if you have to flood them, we can always do that, open the gate, but we've never done that. So Lahore sleeps peacefully today. It is because India controls the water in Punjab and does not deliberately release water to hurt them.
I think it brings us back to the point that you were mentioning, that very responsible upper riparian state. I mean, I also think that it's beautiful that India has never taken advantage of its superior position on that.
Absolutely.
What would you say is the biggest misconception that people have about the Indus Water Treaty?
That India gave away waters to Pakistan. I think it did not. I would say that India retained its 100% interest on the eastern rivers. Eastern rivers then was very important to us. It was the immediate interest. Remember, Pakistan was also negotiating very hard on the eastern rivers. Everything was about the eastern rivers. The western rivers were the difficult rivers, the terrains, the Himalayan mountain ranges. You couldn't do anything at that point of time. You didn't have the technology or the financial assistance to do anything on that river. So the focus was actually on the eastern rivers. And the fact that we got all of the eastern rivers is remarkable.
Right.
But since it was a negotiation, it was a give and take, we had to also give away certain things. And now what did we give away? We paid Pakistani 62 million pounds. And this is a big issue even today. That imagine we paid the Pakistanis. We gave them water and also paid them. But we gave them waters because we retained 100% of our rights on the western rivers.
That's the logic which people don't want to probably.
One can argue, even I have argued that I think India should have at this point negotiated hard. The engineers should not have given away so easily this vast amount of money, which in the debate in the parliament on November 30, 1960, people stood up. I think it was Arun Goa, I think, who said that this is a fiscal harakiri, that India in such fiscal difficulty is still willing to give away 62 million pounds to Pakistan, and for what? And we are not getting anything out of it. There is no peace, it seems, with Pakistan, so why give away waters? But I think the engineers explained it was not 62 millions lump sum at one go. So the negotiation was about 10 years period.
It was probably tranche.
Yeah. So you divided it by 10 years, so you gave about just 6.2 million every year. But this was a negotiation, you see. When you negotiate, you can't have the cake and eat it. So if you take certain part of your interest, you have to compromise somewhere.
Absolutely.
So I think that was what the process was all about.
So we'll do a quick rapid fire round with you, sir. You can answer in a word or in a sentence. One river that fascinates you the most?
Indus.
Hydropower or irrigation?
Both.
Treaty or technology?
Treaty.
Glacier or monsoon?
Glacier.
One book every student of geopolitics should read?
The Revenge of Geography, Robert Kaplan.
Wow.
And Robert Kaplan cites me in his book.
Oh, beautiful. One historical figure you'd love to have interviewed?
Sir Cyril Ratcliffe. And I would have
Well
interviewed
said.
as to what he thought about the rivers as he was dividing the land.
Coffee or tea while writing?
None of them.
Mountains or coastlines?
Mountains, because I think they're the front line of climate change today, and they're the front line of security issues as well.
One word to describe the future of South Asia's water security?
Cooperation.
Thank you, sir. That was beautifully put, and it was a pleasure having you at Books and Banter.
Thank you so much. Lovely talking to you.